And welcome to a brand new week of Capital Talk, a program we hope will have an impact on the future of Kenya. Now more than ever, I'm Jeff Kinang, and our brand new week means a brand new theme, and we want to take, or rather look at a report card on the continent. What's going on, folks? So many things going on, and we don't really consider, but we must, because it's important. And starting with a war not too far from here in our backyard, folks. What's the real reason Kenya is in Somalia? The bigger picture. Also, South Africa. The ANC, the country's oldest political party, just suspended one of its most radical and controversial stalwarts, if you will, for 5 years. Why? What's the implications across the continent? In Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf just got a second term after a very controversial first-round election. I tell you, folks, things are happening on the continent, and the best person to give us a report card check is a man who, I tell you, what a story. This man, a real general, an officer and a gentleman, president twice in Nigeria, gave up power as a military leader, was elected 20 years later as president. He comes to Kenya every now and then, and it's always a pleasure to have him on the bench because he knows a thing or two about what's going on the continent. Sit back, folks. He's my good friend. I call him Baba. He's the general of generals, former Nigerian president, Olusegun Obasanjo.
Jeff, you are in your usual form.
Yes, sir. I'm in my backyard. Welcome back to Kenya. You like this place, huh?
Oh, I love Kenya. You know, the weather is congenial. The people are good and nice. Everything about this country is good.
Yes, thank you, Baba. I appreciate it. Coming from a Nigerian, and there's always been a clash between Kenyans, Nigerians, but I think all we need to do is understand each other.
No, that understanding is taking place now. You remember on this bench the other day,
yes,
I told you God is a Nigerian, and is frequently visiting Kenya. And whenever I see Kenyans now who watch that program,
right,
they remind me and say, "Where is God now?" I say, "Well, he's on his way to Kenya." And I understand another thing. The other day I was at the airport coming from Mombasa, and I saw a Nigerian young man. I said, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Come to pick a wife." Well, that too is happening.
In Kenya?
In Kenya.
I met him.
You met him?
I met him.
I said, "It's good. It's good."
Yes.
It's good.
Baba, there's so much happening on the continent right now, and you are the man who will probably be best placed to tell us what's going on, because you're a general, you fought several wars, you know what war is like. Kenya is now at war with Somalia. Of all countries, after 20 years of Somalia becoming a failed state, now we're moving in to look for these rebel groups, these terrorists called Al-Shabaab. Good move, bad move, risky move?
Well, it's an unfortunate situation. What we should be doing in Africa today is we should be building bridges. We shouldn't be breaking up old bridges. And no effort should be spared to build bridges. I will go back a little bit, talking about bridge building. When the old East African community was about to break because of Idi Amin, I was pained. I was in West Africa. I was military head of state. I had to send message to Mwalimu and Jomo Kenyatta and say, look, whatever you can do to hold that bridge together should be done.
You told them?
I told them. I sent Tiwa Danjuma to one of them. Unfortunately, that was not possible. Well, the bridge was broken. Now we are rebuilding the bridge. So what that had meant is that we have taken one step forward and 2 steps back. It's not good for any of our countries. definitely in this age when countries, when continents like Europe are coming together, we, in fact, in Africa, more than any continent, needs to come together. But then, having said all this, every country must be mindful of its security. Because you are not a country if your security is in tatters. So, if Kenya believes that her security will be better sustained and maintained by keeping guard along its borders, who am I, or who is anybody to say that Kenya should not do that?
At the same time, Baba, Nigerian troops fought many wars around West Africa. I remember you had troops in Liberia, troops in Sierra Leone. I mean, all up and down the coastline. That's got to put a strain on resources, Baba.
It does. Now, war, well, you are talking of wars in troops in our West African neighbors and countries. What of the civil war itself? War is a thing that should be avoided if it can be avoided. And because the resources you put into war, it does not, especially since we don't produce those weapons of war by ourselves. The resources you put into war, it's resources wasted. And which boils up other people's economy.
Exactly. At the same time, America has...
But having said that, you again, if everything else has failed, I always say use carrot. Now, I believe in this idea of carrot and stick, but carrot must go before the stick. If all your effort to achieve peace, security, development, and all that, even friendship and harmony, by using carrot has failed, then you have to look for alternative.
Yeah, America has tried for the last decade or so to fight terrorism, to fight it in Iraq, in Afghanistan, around the world, and they have failed. Can Kenya be able to beat these terrorists?
Well, if the aim is to achieve a level when you can talk, yes, because at the end of the day, you will have to talk. If that is the aim, let us get to a level that you can get these rebels or militants or radicals to see reason and talk with them. I think you may have to take measure that will lead to talking.
Yeah.
But especially when you are dealing with an ideology or a movement or a policy, not just an individual, it is difficult.
Absolutely. Since you left office in 2007, you have literally been in an aircraft flying from country to country, trying to bring this continent together again. And things were looking like they were going well. But there are still some hiccups, aren't they?
Well, we are dealing with human beings. Interaction with human beings normally creates some form of friction. What is important is that when the friction is created, we oil it up. You know, machines that are made by human beings, when they rub one against the other, they generate friction, heat. But the makers of those machines know that, and they put oil to smoothen and not make that friction to burn the engine or the machine. I believe the same thing with us in human relations. Friction will be generated. The most important thing is that when that friction is generated, there's oil to cool it.
Yes. Is there enough oil in Africa?
I believe there is at sub-regional level. Take for instance, here in East Africa, you are building a sub-regional organization. That sub-regional organization should be in a position to say, well, look, there's heat here, there's friction here. That should be. And in West Africa, we have ECOWAS. You talk earlier on about Nigeria going into Liberia, Nigeria going to Sierra Leone. We needed to do that, yes, to make sure that we cool sufficiently and then get things together.
What about countries or leaders who don't want to listen? And for instance, we're hearing that Eritrea, the bad boy of the East, wants to jump into this war, is allegedly aiding the rebels in Somalia. How do we talk to them?
Isas is a friend, and I've had many occasions in the past to talk to him about Eritrea and Ethiopia. He is a man who tends to see things as black and white, but he's still a man that can be talked to. And I will not write any human being off as incorrigible, unreasonable. Let us try to reach out to him, hear his own side. I have a situation now, or we have a situation in Nigeria, this group called Boko Haram.
Boko Haram, yes.
Everybody said they are faceless people, and I asked the authority if I can reach out to them, and the answer was positive. And well, look, who are you? Do you have grievances? What are your grievances? Can your grievances be addressed? And I found that they were not as faceless as people thought.
They're human beings.
They were human beings, like you and I. And they love the good things of life.
Yes.
Like you and I.
Yes.
They want to send their children to school. They want to prepare their children for good things of life. Now, if we know this about them, why don't we then find out what their grievances are? Again, using my metaphor, carrot and stick. Now, if you have grievances that can be addressed, all right, let's address it. But if your grievances have been addressed and you are still obstinate, then you will get the stick.
Yes.
I believe that is possible almost in all cases. In all cases.
So there is hope, eh?
I believe so.
Baba, I want to talk more about that after the break. And also, let's go to Liberia now, because the country waits is very close to your heart. And Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, first African woman president, the re-election was very controversial. In fact, for the second round, the opposition backed out. And now she's become president, and not everyone's happy. So there's that fragility. Also, at the end of the day, Baba, is there hope on this continent? I know you're such an optimist, but there's many pessimists out there.
I'm an incurable optimist.
Let's take a break. It's Baba on the bench, and it's only Monday, folks. I tell you, this man, he has seen war. He has seen all kinds of situations in the last half century. but he still has so much hope for this continent. He says carrot and stick approach always works. And yes, we are all human, and no one is indispensable, or no one cannot be encouraged to dialogue. Do not even think of going away, folks. The bench is at its best, and we'll be back in a moment. And welcome back to Capital Talk. What a week it's going to be, folks. We are trying to tackle the issues plaguing our continent, and we're kicking it off with a man who knows a thing or two about leadership, because this man was military head of state once in his life in Nigeria, gave it up, 20 years later was elected 2 terms president of Africa's most populous nation. If that's not leadership, folks, if that's not tenacity, if that's not a real African, I don't know what is. And he's here to give us his knowledge, his experiences, yes, and his valuable, or make that invaluable advice on the way forward. Sit back for Baba, Mr. President. Do you get tired of this? Do you get tired of all this travel up and down the continent? This thing you mentioned, 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Does it get tiring?
Well, at times it's frustrating when you look at a country that you think should be doing well, and you think, oh, everything is there for that country to do well. You have taken all the necessary measures that you think should be taken, and no country is immune from this in Africa. Then you see again something coming up, something cropping up. You get at times frustrated. But I believe we should never give up. And I think that is where my own hope lies. Because I've interacted with up and coming youth in the continent. They are thinking better than their grandfathers and their fathers.
They are.
They are.
The last time you and I spoke, Baba, we talked about the Arab Spring, remember?
Yeah.
And you yourself said, Arab Spring's fine, it's okay, it happens. But the worst thing that you would want to happen is an African winter. Remember?
Yeah. Now, I believe we can avoid African winter. I believe so. And the signs that I have been seeing in some countries, about 10 days ago I was in Bamako, Mali. The signs there are good. They are not there, but they are moving in the right direction. Near you here, the signs in Rwanda are good.
Yes.
They are not there, but they are moving in the right direction. And if you go down south, the signs in Malawi are good.
Zambia has a new president.
Now, Zambia, now, you may then say to me, or we may say to ourselves, well, these are countries in their own right, but they are smaller countries. Yes, I will admit that, I will accept that you have about a dozen African countries who have to move in the right way to pull Africa up. You have talked about South Africa. You will talk about my own country, Nigeria,
which was a pariah for many years, remember?
Okay.
Remember?
And we moved from there.
Yes.
Nobody will touch Nigeria until I became elected president.
Yes.
And then we became the darling of the world.
Yes.
We hosted the Commonwealth meeting. We hosted African Games.
Yes.
And things were going fine. So it is possible. For that reason, I will not rule out anything.
Yeah.
But I will say that these countries that need to get their acts together and pull Africa up in totality must do so. I've talked about South Africa. I've talked about Nigeria. I will talk about Kenya. I will talk about Ethiopia. I will talk about Angola. I will talk about the Democratic Republic of Congo. I will talk about Senegal. I will talk about Ghana. Now, these are countries that have to really do what should be done.
Yes.
Now, I just talk about a few of them. It's not exhaustive. Tanzania is there. Now, and we must urge on these countries, their leaders, their people, that you are important for Africa. So you must get it right.
Yes.
And you must do it right.
What about Africa's oldest republic, Mr. President, Liberia? Founded in 1847, Mr. President. But then that horrible, tragic civil war that killed more than 200,000 people. Charles Taylor, you offered him exile in Nigeria. Finally, he ends up in The Hague. Ellen Johnson comes in. It looks like she was going to change things. It was a tough 6 years. She said she wasn't going to run, but she ran again. Now she's been given a second term, Mr. President. Will that country stabilize?
I believe so. I believe so. I talk to both sides, so to say. The way the election had gone, it will not make things too easy for President Salif Johnson. But she has experience. Her first assignment now should be to reach out. She has to reach out. She has to leave no stone unturned to reach out.
Because they could go back to where they were,
Now,
right?
because if she does not reach out, doing anything will be almost impossible. And I do hope and pray that the opposition will not be intransigent to the point of going into the bush. Because if that happens, or if they call out for ungovernability of the country, and that happens, then they will be going back to square one.
Exactly.
So it is now incumbent on all the friends of Liberia, the ECOWAS, and President Salif Johnson herself, and to use all the political sagacity that she has, and getting everybody that can help to bring back a Liberia that has unity of purpose. They don't all have to sleep and put their heads in the same direction, but they must have unity of purpose.
Yes.
And the opposition or the other side must feel that they are regarded. After all, that is what everybody wants.
Absolutely. That leadership that you always talk about, is it there? Because we're always crying out, this is our biggest stumbling block, is the leadership factor. We just don't have the leaders. Are they there? Can they be brought out?
I think some of them have shown that they can do something. Take Malawi. Within a period of 24 months, the country moved from a deficit food country to a surplus food country.
They were exporting.
They were exporting. Exporting maize even to you here.
Yes. Yes.
Within a space of 24 months.
That's leadership.
So it can be done. In Nigeria, within a space of 4 years, we moved from 150,000 tons of cocoa production to 400,000 tons. It can be done. So, why is it not being done? And I believe that is where it's not only the fault of leadership, it's the fault of leadership and the fault of our people. If we don't allow our leaders to get away with it, they will wake up. They will smarten up.
Yes. So hold them in check.
Hold them in check. Hold them to question. Why we have had enough excuses. We are tired of excuses. If excuses are for sale, Africa will be the richest.
Because we have so many of those.
We don't want any more excuses.
Yeah.
We want performance. And don't give us any excuse for non-performance. They will go.
Yes. Bottom line, Mr. President, is the glass half empty or is it half full?
I told you I'm an incurable optimist. As an incurable optimist, my glass must be half full. And then any little that I can add to it,
Yes.
to increase the fullness of the glass.
You'll do. But where's the energy, Mr. President? Where are you getting the energy from? We get tired of what we're doing sometimes, and we say, oh, let's just shut down this continent and we'll come back in 2 years and see.
Yeah, but
where do you get the energy?
If you shut down the continent, when you come back in 2 years, it will even be worse. Why don't you try and manage it and keep on improving on it? Don't shut down the continent.
Yeah.
Let us keep on moving, talking, acting, and wherever we can influence things, let us influence them for good.
Yes.
And I believe that is where our salvation is. And you talk of energy, I believe in the grace of God. And for as long as I have any breath in me, I can stand and I'm well enough, I will never stop working for Africa.
Don't stop, Mr. President. Do you miss being president? Do you miss it?
No.
You don't?
With somebody like you, opportunity to see you the way I see you.
Yes.
In your true character and nature.
Yes.
What else? Why should I miss that? Why should I miss being in the golden cage?
Yes.
When I can be in
You see? In a lovely...
in a lovely garden like this. Jeff, nice seeing you.
Thank you,
again.
Mr. President.
Thank you very
well
much.
done.
Thank you.
And please keep coming back.
Thank you.
Folks, this man, he calls it like he sees it. He says he's an incorrigible optimist of this continent. His glass is always half full. And he says he keeps trying to fill it further and further because he has so much hope. He has so much hope. If he has that kind of hope at his age and with that energy he has, what excuse do you and I have? Think about it, folks. You cannot find guests like President Olusegun Obasanjo anywhere else but right here on the bench because he loves Nairobi and he'll keep coming back to the award-winning station and the award-winning bench on K24, where we are, as always, even in times of eternal optimists. Yes, indeed, and true African statesmen. We're still all Kenyan.
All the time with you.